Okay.
Accent these people, right? Which is that's the word, like that older generation.
So we're here to learn a little bit about level instances, world partition, and data layers. The talk doesn't really cover level instances, and I'm specifically not cover. You know what? This whole talk is really for Gratchen. I don't know why he's not here, but it's okay. Um, the level instances we're not really going to cover because I think that they are, for the most part, self-explanatory. You just drag and drop a level into another level. You've got yourself a level instance. The There are a few things that are interesting about this setup, and things that you need to be aware of. I'm going to just sort of fly through some of the things that I have learned about this. Um, so, number one, uh, you can't have, obviously, you can't have things that reference something from in one level in another level. And this can be a little bit limiting in the way that you go and like set up your levels, because you might have two different separate areas which you'd like to, work on independently, but those two areas might need to have, communication between them. So for example, you might want something in one level to depend on the state of something in another level. You you while you can create like an out of band way of, or an indirect way of having those two things communicate. The um, usually the most straightforward and simple way to have things communicate across levels is by actually having a direct connection. And level instances are, yeah, they're a great way of doing things modularly, but I think that in many cases where you might want to use a level instance, you could potentially use a data layer inside a world partition instead. And that's really what I'm going to talk about here. One other thing that I learned about yesterday with level instances is that it is very difficult, if not impossible, to move foliage out of a level instance into another level instance. And that's because the foliage has its own separate mode of operation. So um, what I've done actually in our project for when I'm trying to move foliage between levels is, or move everything out of a sub level into a world partition with data layers. I will remove everything except the foliage and then have the sub level just contain the old foliage. Perhaps we can just repaint the foliage, but there's the limitation that is in, um, between with sub levels, world partition, and foliage, might get resolved in a future version. The You can move foliage from one level to another if you're using the old system, but it's not hooked up for the new system. Anyway, bit of a ramble there. So the old system is called world composition. World composition allowed you to, um, compose worlds from a number of sub levels. So sub levels are also, like, it's like a deprecated concept, and um, instead of sub levels, yeah, you use data layers. So if you've used sub levels before, if you're using world partition, you don't need to know anything about sublevels. That levels panel is no longer used. World partition completely replaces world composition, and it's the way that um, Unreal is moving. Like that's what Fortnite uses, and going going forward, we probably shouldn't use world composition for pretty much anything. Um, if you haven't used world composition before, it was a way of, you can make a world out of other worlds, and you can dynamically like load or stream levels in and out and control visibility that way. But this is replaced by, in world partition, by data layers. So if you have successfully created a world partitioned world, the world partition tab will contain something looking like this. Um, and the default settings might actually dissuade you from using World Partition because it is particularly annoying. One of the things that like this thing's actually showing you is which regions that are. It's not actually in this view, but what you would see, but by default, is all of the regions that are in the partitioned world, and their loaded or unloaded status. You would what and what can be frustrating is when you boot up the level, there's nothing there, and you have to switch over to the World Partition tab and then right click and say load from here. Load from here, and it'll load all of the regions that are in close proximity to whatever position that you clicked on. But there is a workaround that I think probably should be on by default in the editor, um, and that is oh, I haven't talked about that. Oh, there we go. Levels is this thing here, the disable loading in editor. I only discovered this week. It's an option in the World Partition settings, editor settings. If you click this on, then World Partition is way less annoying to work with. In eventually, when we start working with larger levels and we can't have everything loaded at once, or we need to work on refining the dynamic loading and unloading, yeah, we probably would not have this turned on. So go back here. One of the so there's two things that come with World Partition. I realize that this talk is probably going to take a little bit longer. Maybe I should talk faster. There's one of the things is streaming, and the other thing is external actors, or one file per actor. You can use it, but Unreal will complain whenever you try to use the World Partition with a level inside it that isn't using one file per actor. So one file per actor is a tool which is it's like a setup which allows a level to the level will have every actor in the level will have a file associated with it, which contains all of the like the details panel changes and like the transform, all that stuff. And the intention there is to allow multiple people to edit a level without causing conflicts, unresolvable conflicts, because previously, without one file per actor, you would have to, one person would be able to edit the level and then they would have to check it in and then another person could check it out. But if two people are editing it simultaneously, they'll end up with a conflict and one of the two people will have to manually reapply the changes. The one thing that is particularly frustrating about one file per actor, while it does stop those kinds of merge conflicts, it's particularly fragile. Almost all of the problems that I have with like corrupt assets and stuff are probably issues related to one file per actor. So one thing that you need to make sure that you do anytime you're working with one of these levels, when you're checking stuff in, make sure you always check in all of the external actors, like the files that are associated with in the external actors folder. If you don't do that, you're going to have a bad time. Secondly, don't mess with anything in that folder. Don't rename anything. Don't move anything. It's going to be a problem. The only way to move content, well, in fact, I wouldn't even rename levels. This causes problems. You're better off duplicating the level and giving it a new name. Yeah. So the other thing with that is another bug that I noticed that occurs is if you do rename your level, when you start Unreal, if the default map is a redirector, it has trouble loading assets. So two things here. One is just don't rename levels because it seems to cause problems with one file per actor. And secondly, the don't leave redirectors in folders, and particularly don't let the engine end up with a redirector as the default map, which could, if your engine is set up to load the last map that you had open, that can very easily happen. So just be careful with that. The other feature that comes with World Partition is level streaming, which I mentioned a little bit. The level streaming does what it says on the box. It allows you to dynamically load assets, but not only controlling loading assets, but you can also control asset visibility. If you prior to checking this box, disable loading an editor, if you did the way I was solving the issue of things being annoying, is every world partition world, I would just turn off enable streaming. And what this does is makes the entire level load at once. And by default, there'll be a warning in the corner saying this level has streaming disabled, and that's also annoying. So I just turn this off by hide enable streaming warning. So this checkbox is very useful. It's on, but it will be on by default in our project. The next thing that comes with World Partition is data layers, and they replace the old layers system. Layers, one of the biggest problems with layers was, again, renaming. So I believe that layers, like the F name based, so like text based. So if you rename something, you can accidentally break things. So data layers have a they work almost identically to layers, but there's three kind of modes that you can work with them. Data layers, there's a tab here called data layers, and this is, for example, the new the new level, O1 level that we're working on. I've made a bunch of different data layers. Each one of these ones corresponds to a data layer U asset. And an interesting thing about data layers is that you can nest them. So you can have a child data layers, but the things that are in the children don't necessarily need to belong to the parent. So what that means is that when you've got data assets, maybe I can even show this. So when you've got data layers and actors, see, all the actors can be assigned to a data layer. If this isn't on by default, you can right click here, turn it on, turn it off. And you see there's the old layer system, which is no longer relevant. So data layers, so you can assign things to data layers through, like, you can click on the data layer and add selected actors to selected data layers, or remove. You can right click on a data layer, select the actors that are in there, append. There's a bunch of useful things here. You can control visibility of the things in the data layer. So for example, I can turn off all of this stuff. I can turn off just the environment. I can turn off, I'm starting to try to figure out a way to like split the worlds up. Ground is this thing. So these things can happen, that they can be set up so that you can dynamically just control the visibility. This is one of the big things that is different about layers and data layers and world composition, is that you can control a lot more of this stuff at runtime or in the editor. So by default, when you create, for example, I go over here, right click, I think here, create new private data layer. This is an editor only data layer. So it only exists in the editor. That doesn't control anything to do with like runtime, streaming, loading, etc. But you can start attaching stuff to this. And this is mainly for just like organization, editing purposes. The next thing is that you can also create a right click, new data layer, and this one gets associated with an asset. Now, I'm still figuring out the best way to manage, like, or organize these things. But go here, create a new data layer asset, and it's kind of like just a name that is set up as an asset. And the benefit of that is that if you change the name of the data layer, it'll get redirected and updated in all of the places that it is used, so it doesn't break stuff. There's also a couple of settings that are associated with the data layer, whether it's an editor only or a runtime data layer. If it's an editor only, it will, yeah, it's only got editor properties. But if at runtime, you can control the initial runtime state, so it can be unloaded, loaded, or activated. If it's unloaded, that means exactly as it says on the box. Loaded is it's loaded, but it's not visible, and activated means that it's visible. I don't know why they didn't just call it visible, but activated means visible, loaded means loaded but not visible, unloaded, etc. And these are things that you can control programmatically in Blueprint, or you can control it, or you can not control it at all. One of the neat things here is that it allows you, like one of the good use cases for this is toggling content on and off. And what I'm thinking of using data layers for here is we're about to introduce a new system for like day and night cycle. And when it's daytime, we would have the daytime stuff toggled on and the nighttime stuff toggled off, and vice versa when it's nighttime. And that's almost like the perfect use case for data layers. And for that use case, the only way that you can toggle stuff on and off at runtime is if it is a runtime data layer. So if it's editor only, yeah, you lose those runtime capabilities, runtime toggling capabilities. Go back to editor and runtime. Yeah, talked about that. That's it.
Very nice.
Great.
Yeah.
That was
So yeah, any questions?
What are the typical application of this, and would it concern like only Gretchen doing art or anything else that you?
No. Good question. Yeah, you can use it for pretty much anything. The editor only ones are obviously they can replace the where did it go? Over here. They can replace the use of folders. It's kind of like tagging. So I can like, if I wanted to say, create a new, where is it? You go click here. Create a new private data layer and just make it like enemies. I can organize all the enemies in here. One of the things I think I did here was I put all of the VFX. Maybe I haven't done that. Oh yeah, I have put all the VFX in a
data layer,
in a particular data layer. And the reason why was actually specifically for Ahmed, because he said he was having problems on his computer displaying VFX. So he could just come in, turn off all the VFX, and then his computer will be happy again. So that's the kind of thing you can do at editor in the editor. For runtime, it would be doing things either for optimization purposes. So if you know that something is no longer going to be needed, or a whole group of things that are no longer going to be needed, you can just say, all right, we are in this area. I'm going to turn for example, all the enemies off, which means that all of the AI would stop running, which would be an optimization. And also toggling stuff on like day-night cycle and here's another thing which I didn't mention, which is quite neat, is that if you are using the gameplay features feature, so it's like a plugin that allows you to make modular gameplay features, they can have data layers inside them, which they can enable and disable their content based on the feature. So, for example, let's say you built, we do some DLC or something. We can implement that as a game feature, and let's say it's a fishing mini game or something, and the fishing rod would exist only in the fishing minigame data layer. And maybe if you haven't bought the DLC, that data layer is just not turned on, for example. Any more questions? No? Yeah.
Good.
Oh, another neat thing is, things can belong to multiple data layers. So, for example, like the stuff that I have here in the effects, right? If I, why can't I? Why isn't this selecting it? There we go. See, it's currently in DLFX, but I could also add it to another. Let's chuck it in environment, for example. Let's click on environment and add selected actors to. Yeah, and so there we go. We've got two. But this can be a little bit frustrating or / confusing, because when you if I disable the effects layer, the butterflies still stay because it's used by the environment data layer. And
I think it makes sense this way. It makes sense this way, like, because if it's unloaded, then yeah,
it can't use it. And if you do want to be able to, for example, this exterior data layer, I don't think anything actually belongs to this particular data layer. But this data layer has inner data layers. If I made everything in this data layer a member of the exterior data layer, I wouldn't be able to turn any of these off. So if I turn off ground, anything that's in the DL exterior, which is everything in ground, would not get turned off. Yeah. So that's a neat trick, is you have stuff, you have the interior, the internal data layers, but things inside it don't necessarily need to belong to the parent. Yeah. Any other questions? Sammy, I think you said you had a whole modular set of questions.
No, it's all good.
Okay.
yeah.
And you can change it in runtime. Yeah.
Change
Like
the data layer.
disable the whole layer kind of thing. Is that
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
There's a blueprint API for it. So all you need to do, and this is another neat thing about having an asset, is if you get a reference to the asset, then you can work with the data layer to disable it. And you need to access.
Could you?
Go ahead.
Is it like, so it's all packed? Like if I have like 3 types of DLFX layers, like high poly, low poly, and kind of thing.
Yes.
I guess all that would be. I mean, this is just an idea. Like,
yes.
Could we use it like that? Like high poly, and you can like change it in the settings.
Yeah.
So you can like.
Oh, in the settings? What do you mean?
I mean, kind of. I just whatever. I mean, change the which affix I want to use. Like,
yes, exactly. Yeah, you can do exactly that. Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is a stupid question, but if they're not like, if I disable them in editor, would they be packed? Like they would be in build? Yeah.
Oh, you know what?
Like if I build and they're
Yeah.
disabled, like they would be still there. Like,
I reckon they're still there, because this only, I know it says loaded in editor, so it does actually, it literally unloads them. I don't know the answer to that one. I haven't really worked with data layers and packing yet.
that's
Good
okay,
question.
okay.
Good question. I don't know. Anything else? No? Okay. Then we're done. Thanks for coming. I hope that was educational.